What's up, everybody, and welcome to Real Time for the Real Everyday Movie Fan. I am, of course, your host, Josh Williams. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and I am joined by my good friends, James and Ryan. How you doing, boys?
I was going to introduce myself, but okay, I'm Ryan.
No, I'm going to do it this time because I'm going to change it up. So there.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much for joining us here today because we're here to give you our spoiler-heavy, I am emphasizing that, review of Black Widow. Now, Ryan, who's all in Black Widow? Who directed and wrote it?
Black Widow is directed by Cate Shortland. Who wrote it? We never do that, but okay. I can tell you off the top of my head, it's credited as story by Jack Schaeffer and Ned Benson, and screenplay by Eric Pearson.
Nice.
Of course, stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, O.T. Fagbenle, Olga Kurylenko, Ray Winstone, and of note, Ever Anderson. And something I wanted to mention to you guys, the actress who plays young Natasha at the beginning of this movie is Ever Anderson. She is the daughter of Mila Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson.
I thought she looked familiar.
You can hope that she will make better choices in her career than her parents. And her next big role is she is playing Wendy in Disney's remake of Peter Pan.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
When you said Wendy, I thought it was going to be like the life story of Wendy's the restaurant.
No.
I mean, Mia Jovovich, she did good at the beginning with like Fifth Element and stuff like that. And,
yes.
But
total
I mean,
side
where
note,
she didn't have to speak English?
Yeah.
True.
No, total side note, like a friend of mine, we got drunk one night and he was getting very drunk and he couldn't pronounce her name and he was talking about Mila Jovovich and we just made jokes at the syllables. It kept adding more syllables and more. Mila Jovovich.
Oh my God, that's too, jeez, messed up, man. No. All right, guys,
Anyway.
Before we get into our review, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you receive more of our various content in the future. Also, I want to let you know that this review is sponsored by B&B Missouri 6 Theater, so we're going to do a quick promotional video for them, then we'll be right back into the review. We'll be right back. B&B Missouri 6 is the premier theater to see a movie if you're in the Missouri area. The refreshments are delicious, the seats give you full reclining comfort, and the movie viewing experience is euphoric. But the main reason I wanted B&B to be my sponsor is their staff and the overall movie-going experience they provide. They're professional, friendly, inviting, and they truly have you leaving the theater feeling, as their motto goes, the magic of the movies. All right, guys, thank you so much for indulging me. I have to give a shout out to my sponsor because they take really great care of me and us. Whenever Ryan comes down, you know, he gets hooked up just like I do to help review these movies so we can get them out to you guys. So now we got everything out the way. Let's get into Black Widow. Now, James, he's in Canada. He had to rent it on Disney Plus because movie theaters are slowly opening. Ryan, you got to see it in the theater, right? Or did you pay for it? Okay, good.
No, I saw it in theater and I had a beer. And it was awesome. You know, like I just kept thinking Pulp Fiction. It's now America. We can do that in. So
now I got
To be fair, theaters like that have existed for a little while, but they've been niche.
What's that?
I said the theaters like that have existed for a little while. Like there's the Alamo Draft House, but they're very niche.
yeah, we have Flicks Brew House here in Des Moines, but this was just a regular theater, Jordan Creek Mall, and
okay, yeah,
yeah. So
nice.
But anyway,
yes. Again, we're giving you guys a warning right now. This is spoiler heavy. Hitting the review. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Come back. If you're watching it now, that means you have seen it and you're ready to talk spoilers with us. Now, we all saw it. Without giving our review or scores first, what is just our overall general thoughts? Ryan, you first. You didn't like it?
I mean, it was. Everyone else seems to like it so much. Like, oh my God, you're so good! Like on Facebook and everything. Like all the, and all the comments on the promotion stuff. Oh my God, it was like so good. Like, like it was to me. It was just. I mean, it was fine. Do you not want me to give my score right now, or?
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead. I just wanted to get your
I'm probably gonna be nice and give it a 6 out of 10, which is like fresh, fairly fresh. Like you gotta give it a sniff before you eat it. But yeah, well, that's fresh. But I mean, to me, it's there's no argument. Like one of the promotions said this was the best Marvel movie, and of course, there's always someone somewhere saying something that they picked those reviews out of. I actually had to pause the video, find out exactly who said that, look him up online. And I'm tempted to like Twitter bomb, like be a Twitter idiot, and be like, "You're the dumbest guy." Like, there's no argument for this being like the best Marvel movie or even a great movie. It's a good movie at best. It's yeah. I mean, it's kind of weak to me. I mean, I understand it's kind of about Natasha Romanoff going back and telling sort of the completion of her story before what we know of as her ultimate demise, and giving her some resolution, giving her some closure on a lot of the stuff of her past. But it's a very simple story. It really almost didn't have to be 2 hours. It could have been like a 90-minute movie. I think a lot of the action scenes kind of inflate it. And a lot of it didn't work for me. We can get into that later on. Like, a lot of the specifics didn't work for me, but that's kind of my general thoughts.
Okay. James?
I had to talk to a friend of mine after I saw this, and kind of like shoot back and forth with him about this, because I can't articulate my thoughts about this movie, which is going to make a terrible review, but I'm here anyway. Because I didn't enjoy this film as much as everyone else did.
Oh, wow.
But I can't find fault in it. I can't find specific things. That's not true. There's one or two things that I don't like that are very specific, but it's like, as a whole, I can't really fault the film as it is. Like, I can't find legitimate criticism for it that I think merits my feelings on it. So I think, and a friend of mine kind of framed it as, this movie just isn't for you. And I can accept that. I accept that, like, Natasha's never been a character I have a lot of vested interest in. I don't think Marvel in the MCU has really done her well, because they've never really found a good sort of consistent role for her. And some of the choices that they've made for her character have been really poor. I'm looking at you, Joss Whedon, and the whole "I'm a monster because I can't have children" thing, which is a misreading of the scene, but it's still, it's not good writing. And I don't think that she's ever gotten fair shake, but I also don't have any sort of like investment in her character. There is an audience that very much does, and this film has been something that people have been anticipating since the first Avengers film, basically. I mean, kind of Iron Man 2, but mostly the first Avengers film, because that's where, you know, we really got to know her. She wasn't just a femme fatale secondary character. She became a person in that film.
Yep. It's basically a sex pot in Iron Man 2. Yeah,
but like, and people have been wanting to see her backstory, like where she came from, how all of this came to be. They've been wanting to get to know her more and like understand things about her background and her character development, especially now that, you know, she got such a lackluster ending. A lot of people were very disappointed with her death, which, I mean, spoilers for Endgame, but if you haven't seen it at this point, I can't help you. So, like, I don't think that this is the farewell that she deserved as a character. But again, I acknowledge that this film isn't for me, in the way that, like, I wasn't a big fan of Guardians either, and everybody seems to love Guardians. And like the second and third Iron Man films didn't work for me, where a lot of people love the third Iron Man film. So like, certain films are just not for certain people, and I'm okay with not liking every Marvel movie. But again, I can't articulate what it is about this that doesn't work, and it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to give it a solid C, a 7 out of 10, because it's not terrible, but like, I don't know what it is. And it's bugging me.
So, I mean, after I give my quick thoughts, we'll kind of go into what we like. Maybe that'll trigger some things as you remember it in your head, what you may not like. For me, it's funny. I'm actually going to be the odd person out. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I found myself really caring about the story that was progressing through it and the character developments of both. It was very simple. It was not very simple. It's very clearly me a passing of the baton to Florence Pugh's character. Yeah. Her sister, her quote unquote little sister, which I honestly, going in this movie, I thought they were all actually family. Like, no joke. Like, I thought they were actually family. It turns out, you know, that they're just her fake Russian family who, you know, she was on assignment with these people. So that was very interesting to me. And I just found myself laughing a lot, just enjoying the ride. The action scenes were actually phenomenal, quite done well, and very interesting new action scenes that we really haven't seen before. And I find myself really loving it, and I'm probably going to give it, I'd say an 8.5.
Wow.
So I really enjoyed it. I still had a couple issues here and there. So, but to me, this is like, we've seen a lot of big time budget films coming in theaters already, but this to me feels like the blockbuster summer film that people have been waiting for. That's actually good quality and not just like, because you remember when you watched like Kong versus Godzilla, you're not expecting some kind of Shakespearean story. You're just expecting monsters versus, monsters fighting and killing each other. Whereas this, there was a lot of heart to it. There's a lot of story to it, in my opinion. A lot of character development between the relationships, and maybe it even gives a little more context into her sacrifice in Endgame. So those are the things I really enjoyed. And I'll start off top of what I really enjoyed, what I thought was one of the best parts in Who Stole the Show, and that was Florence Pugh. She stole the show. And if anybody's haven't known what she's in, she's been in movies like Fighting with My Family, Little Women, and Midsommar. If you have not seen those three performances, watch them, please. She
was nominated for an Oscar for Little Women.
Yep, exactly. She was even nominated for an Oscar for Little Women. So she is a young talented actress. I didn't realize how good of action scenes she was in, like how good she was in action scenes until this. And she really sells it well. The pain that she might feel, or just the anger. She just does a great job all around. And
her great taste in vests.
What's that?
Her great taste in vests.
She gets all the best lines in the movie, to be fair. I mean, they just gave her all the best lines. So.
But I just love that part too. I even love that part because it gives more. It's a little tiny thing, but that's the same vest you see Black Widow in Infinity War.
When I finished watching it last night with a friend, I pulled up Infinity War, fast forward to that scene, paused it, and went, look, she has the vest.
It's the same.
It's the origin story of the vest. That's what's really important here, guys.
It's not. No. It's the emotional weight of what that vest means now. Yeah, it's the little
details of emotional weight. Exactly. That's why I feel like the writing was very carefully written. Now there were some parts in it that there's certain lines that I found were really cheesy. There was a line, I can't remember the exact line, but it was between Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and the big bad guy who was in charge of the Red Room.
Uncle Touchy.
He said something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I remember I burst out laughing like, that was the cheesiest line I think I've ever heard in the MCU, period.
Really? I have no idea what that would be.
I can't remember the exact line.
Don't.
What's that?
I have no idea what that would be. I don't remember anything cheesy about that exchange or that conversation.
There was one cheesy line there that I was like, I can't even remember it, and I hate the fact I can't remember it, but I just remember laughing, not in a good way, just kind of rolled my eyes like, wow. Okay, that kind of took me out of it a little bit. But I'll talk about some other stuff I may like as we go on back and forth with one another. Florence Pugh is my biggest one. What about you, Ryan? What are some of the things you actually did like about the film that you found enjoyment out of?
I mean, Florence Pugh, certainly she got a lot of the best lines. This would be a cool way to die. Eric Pearson, who co-wrote the screenplay for Thor Ragnarok and had a lot of funny lines in that movie, wrote the screenplay for this movie. And it had some funny stuff in it. And it was, like I said, it was kind of interesting to see Natasha Romanoff go back. Does she actually go back to Russia at all, or but go back to the Red Room and kind of confront her past in that way?
Yep.
I was always disappointed that Julie Delpy didn't show up because if you remember in Age of Ultron, when they flash back to her being trained as the Black Widow, Julie Delpy shows up, who's an acclaimed actress. And it's like, oh, holy shit, that's Julie Delpy. Like, she's totally gonna be the villain in Black Widow if they ever make it. And then of course they make it.
I think that's part of the problem with the way this movie was made, is that it took so long for it to come out.
Right.
That they clearly had plans early on and were planting seeds early on, but because of studio politics, it took a decade for this thing to be made. No, not quite a decade, 8-9 years, something like that. And it kind of shows a little bit, in my opinion, because I feel like this movie should have come a little bit earlier in the sort of lineup of movies. Not obviously we've had 2 years of delay with COVID and whatnot, but even before that, its place in a time, it feels a little out of time to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a lot of other people say that as well.
Yeah, and for me, so another thing I liked, and James, you can chime in one of yours. Something I thought of right now when Ryan was saying something was, I really like, because at first I felt like one of the things I first didn't like about the movie was it kind of felt like it was not even her story. Like it was something she was forced into. But when I thought about it, she forced herself into it just because what her defecting the way she did from the Red Room is what caused all the other widows to be mind controlled, essentially. So she's almost like she had this sense of duty, like she has to finish this now.
I do have some question about that because she clearly has some mind control too. Because what's his name? Like she has the conditioning where she can't kill him.
No,
she isn't quite as autonomous. But like
it was okay. So her quote unquote mother explained it. It's a pheromone that he puts on himself that people, anybody, women, men, anybody in the vicinity of him can't harm him. Now, I didn't like that much because that was kind of like it wasn't
it's
fully
a Bond
explained.
Type.
You know what I mean? It was kind of like just accept it and move forward kind of thing. I didn't like that too much, but that was the reasoning it was a pheromone that he put on himself that forces everybody around him like they can't harm him kind of thing. So that's why she severed the nerve in her nose.
Yeah, as a callback to Avengers.
Exactly.
When she knocked Hawkeye's face against the side of the catwalk and woke him up from his brainwashing, she remembered that and did something similar.
Yep. So that was one of the other small things I didn't like. But sorry, James, go ahead.
One of the things I liked that they tie in that this entire there's sort of an escalation of the Widow program, leading to one of my least favorite parts, and I'll get to it. Taskmaster.
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a minute. I do like that they imply that they stole plans from Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. to create their own Winter Soldier, and that's what that's the escalation of what they've been doing is the programming of the Widows. It can clearly be undone by this red mist thing that they've created that we don't really fully explain either. It's just sort of a Deus Ex Machina that they've got for whatever reason. Sorry, it's more of a MacGuffin, I guess, in a way. Although it does have a purpose. But I like that they build that into already existing sort of shorthand of, we know what the Winter Soldier program is, we know how it works because we saw Bucky and his deprogramming and all that stuff, and how difficult it was for him to break out of that and see the escalation of the Widows are there, but they have a flaw, so we have to create something that's even more sort of along those lines. The thing that really worked for me in this movie was, and it didn't work the first time I watched it, I had to go back and watch it again, was the relationship between the family, and specifically what I liked is not the relationship between the family, because clearly that's a very toxic, broken thing that's, left a lot of scars for all of them except for David Harbour's character, who was just
Red Guardian.
He's a joke the entire time, and that's one of my other big complaints is that he isn't even a person. He's just a recurring joke. I like that the family aspect of this is sort of an impetus for her to go back to the Avengers, because they are a very healthy family for her. They are an actual family for her, as opposed to this found family, forced family, whatever you want to call it. That wasn't good for her, but she needs to bring the Avengers back together, and it gives a reason for what she does for the rest of her turn in the MCU. That was my favorite part. Coming back to Taskmaster, Taskmaster has always been one of my favorite non-Spider-Man villains in Marvel, because he is basically kind of unbeatable. Not quite, but because of his power set, he's basically like a Batman type character where he has, because of sort of photographic reflexes and his years of experience with all kinds of superheroes, he stored up all of these combat strategies and combat styles over the years, to the point where he can overcome just about any character's ability through just pure skill and strategy. And I think he makes such a great foil, and I don't feel like this film, they touch on it a little bit where he's watching the airport fight and he's seeing Hawkeye versus Black Panther, and we see him using the shield much like Captain America. So he's clearly studied the Avengers and whatnot, especially the Avengers that have more human level skills as opposed to Spider-Man, because he can't mimic actual powers, he can only mimic skills. which is a fine line, but I think everyone understands what I'm saying. Whereas in this, the Taskmaster, like they imply that stuff, but I don't feel like they ever really portray it well enough.
Flesh it out, yeah.
And I feel like you could put just about any character into that role of Taskmaster, and the end result would be about the same. I don't feel like this needed to be Taskmaster as opposed to like any other masked character. That like Crossbones, I feel like got more character development than Taskmaster did.
Yeah.
I like Flag Smasher got way more character development than Taskmaster did, and it's like these are like C-level villains, whereas Taskmaster is at least B, if not, in my opinion, A tier sort of villain. And unfortunately, like there is a level of like expectation versus what they're promising, and I don't think that they actually promised Taskmaster. So this is partially on me and my expectations for the film, but I do feel let down by that. But in terms of like what they actually deliver in the film, I still feel like they didn't give that character enough, because they are basically just faceless and like building towards just the twist of spoiler, it being the daughter that Nat killed, trying to get rid of the big bad. And like the character never really gets any sort of redemption or any sort of like agency or personality or anything. Like there's no sort of like it's very similar to the way they, like, coming back to my point about the Winter Soldier, it's very similar to what they were doing with Bucky, but Bucky actually got some sort of like remembrance of like who he was and flashback to moments with Steve and whatnot. And there was some like confusion and inner turmoil, and like we don't really get any of that with her. She's just a mindless automaton that could have been any character. It didn't need to be Taskmaster. And I feel like they really dropped the ball on that villain.
And I think they wrote themselves in a corner with Taskmaster. Like, I didn't mind the fact that it was, you know, his daughter, you know, that Natasha.
I don't mind the twist
up.
at all. I don't mind them changing the identity.
Yeah.
That's all fine. I think
they wrote themselves into a corner as far as like her abilities, and they don't really touch up on them as much. And they didn't, like I said, they didn't really go into, they wrote themselves in the corner, and also the fact that she was also being mind controlled kind of thing, whereas I wish they actually wouldn't have done that. I wish, even though it's done all the time, I feel like it would have been better if she wasn't mind controlled and she was doing this of her own volition to get revenge. You know what I mean? And that would have given it a little more depth, because she's so angry and holding on to that anger, and then maybe there's like fighting / conversation between her and between Natasha and Taskmaster to eventually let that go, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Maybe that could have been a third act thing where she's mindless for most of it, but then she's kind of snapped out of it, and then we get to see her personality and character.
I
she's
like
still
that.
after revenge.
I kind of like that she finally breaks her out of it, and the only thing she has to say when she's been freed is he gone? Like,
yeah.
That's the only, like,
but that's it. That's like that is the closest thing we get to any sort of resolution or character development for that person whatsoever.
I think it's kind of neat that's all that needs to be said for her in ways. Like, that's the only thing that she. Really
I don't think it
like,
is all that needs to be
that
said.
son of a bitch gone. Like, is that like because?
Right.
I don't know, but
like, I appreciate the sentiment, and I agree that that's what the character needs. But I don't feel like it landed the way they wanted it to, and I don't feel like that's enough for. Like, she's still just
sure.
It's just sort of a final tiny note on top of like a nothing character, whose entire buildup is just for that twist.
Right.
Yeah, and it doesn't really. I don't know if it adds much to Natasha's journey that was Dragonov's daughter. And
no, because we've never seen them before. Like part of the fervor beforehand was everyone was guessing that it was the mother, because there would be that pre-established relationship or not pre-established before this, but like there would be a little more weight to her being sort of a double agent kind of thing, and like the broken family aspect and whatnot, which,
right,
even though that was predictable and everyone saw it coming, I'm glad they kind of didn't go with it. But at the same time, I feel like that would have given a little more weight to that character. Now, granted, this is only one aspect of the film, and she ultimately isn't the actual villain. It's Uncle Touchy the entire time.
Where is that coming from? Is that
Uncle Touchy was a bit by Patton Oswalt.
Okay.
I won't go into it. I have nicknames for characters. My friend was calling him Harvey Weinstein.
Oh my God.
Because he has a Harvey Weinstein vibe to him.
Yeah.
But we won't go there.
We won't go into that.
Saying that.
But that for me, just like plot wise, so like the plot's very simple. It's like, again, there's things that aren't explained that I still am really frustrated by. Like, I don't know, where is the red stuff supposed to come from? How did Yelena know how to get it to Natasha? All this sort of stuff. And maybe those would be fewer flaws. Maybe there will be fewer flaws for me as if I watch it again and sort of clarify some stuff. But
right.
You know, once they establish the plot, like we got to go find the red room and destroy and kill Dreykov. That's it. Okay, how do we find the red room? We got to find someone who knows where it is. So they find two people. There's two beats, you know, structurally. They find the first person and they find the second person. The reason for that is because they're trying to build a family dynamic. So they find dad, they find mom. Okay. Right. So they find dad, and then they find and it's just very lucky for them, very fortunate circumstances that both these people who were horrendous, evil agents who sold them into slavery are now perfectly willing to help them out and defeat Dreykov. That's very, very fortunate for them. It could have gone the other way, but fortunately, mom and dad were both like, "Let's do it."
Well,
and
in terms of the mom, she was doing it as a redemption thing. The dad was doing it to like regain his former glory.
But that's like the reason the dad was willing to go after Dreykov was because he didn't like him because he put him in prison.
Yeah, which I still don't understand that move.
Say what?
I still don't understand why he put him in prison.
Yeah, well, because it was necessary for the plot for him to have some reason to hate Dreykov. Because in the beginning, he was Dreykov's pal.
No, but I mean, internally within the film, I don't understand why Dreykov put him in prison rather than just kill him.
Yeah.
Like, if he doesn't need the agent anymore, just kill him or put him on ice. Like, there's a million other ways to do it. Like, give me some reason why he has to go to prison.
That's the thing. The filmmakers made the decision for plot reasons, but it doesn't make any much sense within the context of the film, like you say. And then the mom has no real reason other than just for the plot to be sorry about what happened. And now she's just totally she's worked for him. She's developed the serum for him, and now she's like, you know what? You're right. You're the guy. He's the bad guy. Let's go after him. And it's just like, really? Okay. I mean, it could happen, but it's still just like very fortuitous for the plot. And then, but even then, it doesn't work for me, this whole family dynamic. These are horrendous human beings. Like when you watch the opening scene and David Harbour turns out to be a bad guy and turns around and says to Natasha, like, you weren't even young, go to take them away. And it's like, these are horrible, horrible humans. And then in the end, they're supposed to be like a family. And he's like, well, I guess I'm sorry. Even though the very first thing he said was, I was bored with you. And doesn't act sorry for the next 30 minutes of the film, and then says sorry. And then in the end, there's three people who sold her into slavery and basically did this to her. One of them she has to kill for closure, and she hates him so much. And the other two are mommy and daddy now. And it's just, it didn't work for me at all. So
it worked for me for the parents to make their turn, because now I wish they'd, in your eyes, right, as far as Red Guardian, why he got put in prison, the movie doesn't explain, but in my brain, the reason that he would have done that was to make the Red Guardian the scapegoat. Like, kind of distance themselves.
And they need to explain that, in my opinion.
Exactly. They do. You're right. No, you're right. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, use him as a scapegoat. Like, oh, he did it on his own. We have no, like, the people in charge of Red Room or Russia. He did it on his own volition. Russia had nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? Kind of one of those things. And, like, we'll put him in prison for you guys kind of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, with the mom, I will say the emotional weight of realizing, because I firmly believe, and I even think they explain it in the movie. Jump in the comments, anybody, if you guys know this for sure, that she was kept in the dark as far as who was in part of the program and who, you know what I mean, like what all happened with people. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but the moment when she realized that Yelena was part of the people who are being mind controlled, the thing that she created, then at that dinner table, she realized, oh God, this girl who looked at me as a mother figure, I made her a mind control puppet. And that's when she decides, okay, then this has to stop. Because it's always that old phrase, it never bothers you or you never realize how painful something can be until it happens to someone you care about, or even somewhat care about, or someone's a part of your life. You know what I mean? Kind of how, I'm not getting political by any means. I swear to God, guys, folks, it's kind of with the COVID thing, how some people say, oh, it's not that dangerous, or it's not dangerous at all. But then it happens to someone in their family, and then they realize how bad it actually is. It's kind of that same thing, and that's how I took it when she realized that Yelena was one of those mindless puppets. She goes, okay, then it has to be stopped, kind of thing.
I didn't have a problem with the mother's motivation for why she turned on him. Like, she clearly has no love lost for him either. She's just sort of like accepting her plight in it, and like you said, it's not until it touches home that she becomes involved. And like I buy that as sort of her redemption arc, and her sort of this is her apology to the girls as to what happened to them, and her way of sort of making up to them, because obviously, like, going up against this guy is going to be a suicide run for all of them. So like she's clearly, you know, willing to, you know, go to her death to help her daughters free themselves from this monster. The dad, I love David Harbour.
Yeah, me too.
He is such a delight to watch on screen, whether he's just having an interview or he is, you know, a character. Like, I hated his character in Stranger Things at first, but like he made me fall so in love with that character that like I want him in everything now. And I was so excited that he was going to be in this as like the old gruff, like washed up sort of superhero kind of character. And he was that, but like I don't feel like he was ever a person, and I don't feel like he ever felt the weight of what was happening. Like they gave him sort of a moment where he was apologizing, but again, it's played for jokes. It's never sincere.
And that's and that's kind of the problem I had. And again, I'm not trying to be, I don't know, it's just something I realized. So you got the main villain who's a male, and then you have David Harbour's character who it can give a lot of depth to, but it's very surface level. There's no depth to David Harbour's character, and I didn't like that too much. I wish they'd given
even
him
the villain
more.
is sort of like a two-dimensional like Bond villain.
It's
type
definitely
character.
a Marvel Studios villain. Like, they used to complain all the time about Marvel villains and how they sucked, except for Loki. And then they had a string of really great villains that were really very popular with Killmonger, Hela, and Thanos. And now it seems we're back to the really underwhelming villains.
I still like Zemo.
Zemo's great.
Zemo was a great villain.
Oh
But
yeah.
And I still think that Michael Keaton has been the best Spider-Man villain yet. Even though I hold in contention that he was actually playing Norman Osborn and not Adrian Toomes, but that's a whole other diatribe.
And one thing I found was funny about David Harbour's character, Alexei, I can't pronounce the last name, I'm going to try. We're just going to call him Red Guardian. Was that it was obvious he was meant to be the comedic relief for the whole movie. It was obvious. That's how they set him up as such. But Florence Pugh just outshined him. I don't even think she did it on purpose. It's just her comedic timing was really great. That it just her comedic chops outshined his.
Well, she was playing the annoying younger sister who never grew out of the younger sister. I'm going to be as obnoxious and like drive you as crazy as possible kind of character. Right. Whereas again, he's only ever played for laughs, and I don't mind if a character's played for laughs, but give them some depth. Drax is probably played for laughs the entire time, but there's still sort of emotional weight and like his relationship with Mantis in the second film. There's clearly like personality and character involved there, and like he doesn't get any like big serious moments, but like there's still something there. Whereas with David Harbour's character, it just feels like he's so one-dimensional that I can't even enjoy the comedy of it, because it's just annoying after a while. Like I was hoping that there would be some moment where like he would lay his life on the line for the girls, like realizing that like if he doesn't do something they're gonna die, and he has like that father moment of, you know, let go of her, you bitch, kind of thing. The Ripley sort of moment,
right?
And we never got that. Like he has the fight with Taskmaster, but it's again kind of played for laughs, and it's like,
right?
It's so just a missed opportunity in my opinion, and it didn't work for me. If it worked for everyone else, that's fine. Just this is my gripe about the movie.
Well, the other thing is I couldn't understand, and I don't think that I was meant to understand. I don't think the filmmakers thought of this. Is what's this Dreykov guy? What's he all about? Like, who's he? Is he a Russian agent? Is he not? Because in the beginning, the Red Room is supposed to be a Russian government agency. Like he is working in the beginning, in the 90s at least, for the Russian government. In which case, killing him wouldn't do any good. You can't just kill the head of a department and expect the department to go away. You know, the CIA doesn't go away if you kill the head. So I don't know what they thought assassinating him would do. But then he shows back up, and it's like you get the impression he's not. It's no longer a piece of the Russian government. He's like sort of just acting for himself. And I
read it as Hydra, where Hydra was sort of attached to the Nazis, but within the first Captain America film, they were sort of like kind of pardoned off, and then became their own sort of agency throughout time, and like wove their way into
nothing's ever
S.H.I.E.L.D.
made clear. Like, is this the Russian government? Is it not? Is he a freelancer? What's he's saying? I control this world. I'm sending out my widows.
That's what I'm saying. Is I read it as they were part of the Russian government, but eventually, he's gone rogue, and like the whole Red Room is his own sort of like satellite, for lack of a better term, thing.
But what you said to Josh earlier about like you say that's the way you read it, but that needed to be explained to me. I think for the film that needed to be.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like.
No, what I was saying to Josh was that there's things that need to be said. There's things that are subtext. Yeah. The Red Room thing is subtext, whereas character moments need to be explicitly stated as to why characters are in certain places, why things are happening to these people. Why David Harbour is in prison needs to be explicitly stated, whereas the relationship between the Red Room and all we need is the Red Room to just be a villainous organization. That's it.
Doesn't matter if it's for the Russian government, or it doesn't matter what. To me, I needed what is this? Who's running it? What's behind it? What's the end game? What's his goal? Why does he want to keep running it? He's like, I control this world. Like what? And he's ordering the widows to do what exactly? I mean, if it's no longer working for the Russian government, I don't know. It just didn't. There was. I don't think the filmmakers even thought of it. Like, what is he? I don't know. It's a room. They got to blow it up. They blow it up. The movie's over. Let's go.
And that's fair. I mean, that's something that could have been explained. Like, so there's a lot of stuff that could have been explained, but I think we can all agree what really overshadowed that was just the characters of Florence Pugh, Scarlett Johansson. Just their dynamic there was really great. But also, I feel like what really helped it a lot was just the action scenes. Now, I'm putting you guys on the spot here. I'll go first, give you time a chance to talk about it. Like, what in your mind, what was like one of the action scenes that really stood out throughout the whole movie? Because for me, even though it was so small, the action scene that still sticks out to me is the small little like pissing contest almost of the sisters to kind of size each other up. Because to me, that told a lot of story in that action scene. To kind of it also sets up Florence Pugh's character. I'm always blanking on her name. Yelena. It sets her up as like, I'm just as good as she is. So like when people wonder if she's going to be the new Black Widow, like, well, can she fit in her boots? You know, as far as fighting wise, that scene almost kind of does it. You know what I mean? Kind of solidifies that she is just as deadly as Natasha is. So that's one of the things I just really loved, the story being told throughout that whole little scene. And then even moving forward, you see her action chops throughout it, Florence Pugh's character, alongside with Natasha's, and you can clearly see she has what it takes to be an Avenger.
If you haven't gotten it yet, Josh really liked Florence Pugh in this movie.
What's that?
I said if you haven't gotten it yet, folks, Josh really likes Florence Pugh in this movie.
Oh, just a little bit. She's amazing. Come on, she's just. But anyway, but no, just.
I knew that was going to be a thing going in because you've been so enthusiastic about her in the past. Like I knew this review was going to go this way because this is not the first Florence Pugh movie we reviewed together.
Exactly.
So.
In terms of that fight scene,
pass.
I do agree that scene was about character, and I think that's one of my gripes about this film is that fight scenes should be about character. Fight scenes should be about telling a story. They shouldn't just be a action set piece.
But it was telling the story of the characters.
Yeah. That yes, I'm giving that one credit for it. I'm saying that the rest of the film I don't feel lived up to that. And like there's one scene in particular that really bugged me. And that was where all of the widows were surrounding Natasha.
No, yeah.
And taking turns fighting her, which is one of my pet peeves about like fight scenes where there's multiple opponents, and it's just like they all stand there and just wait their turn, and it's like.
Wasn't there a movie sometime where the guy was actually like, they were saying, okay, folks, now what did we agree on? All together. And what did we do? One at a time.
So the Secondhand Lions had a fight scene like that where it's like one at a time, and like you're going to want to use that knife, son. which if you haven't seen that movie, that's a delightful movie.
But what's an action scene that stood out to you that you like thoroughly like remembered and enjoyed out of all of them?
That's what I'm trying to say, is that none of them really worked for me. Now
Oh.
you recapping that one, yeah, it kind of works for me a bit better. But I like, and I think this comes back to my Taskmaster issue, is that like a fight with Taskmaster should be a memorable fight. Like it should be one that like stands out in the pantheon. Like this should be Steve Rogers versus Batroc the Leaper in Civil War, or in Winter Soldier, or like any of the fight scenes with Bucky in that film were just absolutely like the knife fight between them in the street was just amazing. And like this one I felt like didn't live up to that at all, and I'm like,
but if you remember, you got a taste of it, because that's when you realized the Taskmaster was mimicking the Winter Soldier, was when she first fights Natasha on that bridge after she crashed into her, the Taskmaster. She uses a knife, and it was even point blank obvious she was using the same knife tactics as Winter Soldier.
I definitely see her using the tactics of other people, but it's like I never feel like she's actually a threat.
Yeah.
At the level that Taskmaster should be. Like Taskmaster should be the character where like you can't win that fight. You have to escape. You have to outsmart them and escape, because you're not going to beat that character.
Right.
Which isn't obviously always true, because obviously he's a villain, so he's got to lose sometimes. But like that's the level of his skill, and that's the level of like his reputation. Like when you see him show up to a fight, it's like, oh no, that's Taskmaster. I'm screwed. Like it's a
There's
Slade.
not a moment like when you see the Winter Soldier come out of the flames and the Henry Jackman music.
Yeah, like
there's not that moment where
like,
oh fuck, get out of there.
The comparison of Winter Soldier is a very apt one, because I feel like Winter Soldier did it right. Winter Soldier made Bucky a threat, and Winter Soldier made Bucky like a viable opponent. And every time you saw him, it was like, oh no, this is trouble. Whereas with Taskmaster, it's like, this is just another, stormtrooper in like the pantheon of masked villains. And it's like, yes, we see little moments of him mimicking it. Like we see him throwing the shield like Steve, and we see him doing the pose, which that is a moment I absolutely adore, is
the claws,
Yelena
like
making fun of the claws. So like there's little moments, but it's like I don't feel like any of that carried any weight. I did love the recurring joke about Natasha's pose.
Well, that's the best part of the whole movie. That's
where Florence Pugh was the funniest, where she even makes her own pose, and she just gets up.
Like
her just in the store doing the like hair
online.
flip.
Like people talk about online, such a poser. Just like that's gonna be one of the most famous lines in Marvel Studios history.
Which is funny, because it's not a nat pose. That's just a superhero pose. Like they literally call it the superhero pose. Like they make fun of that in Deadpool, where it's like, do the superhero pose, and he lands with the fist down, the arm up.
Superhero landing.
It's really hard on the knees. It's really hard.
But another one that sticks out to me, and I'll let Ryan, if he has one, which maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. If there's an action scene he likes. But there's the one at the end where the ship crash lands, and you see kind of Natasha sees her little sister Yelena free falling after trying to destroy after she does destroy the plane and kills the main villain. Is you see her jump with the parachute, but then gives her sister the parachute and leaves herself open to possibly dying. That to me was great, and just that whole action scene between her and the Taskmaster. Natasha, I love that whole scene, that whole action scene with the free fall down, and that one went from she didn't view her as her little sister, and she didn't really want to care for her, but she really did. She was just holding back that pain, and it kind of that show just had the level of how much she actually did love her. She's willing to sacrifice her own life to save her little sister by giving her the parachute kind of thing, and I loved that moment.
That character moment was great. The fight scene with them falling down the debris really lost
cool.
me. To me, it just felt like redundant of like a dozen different Spider-Man fights, where it's like he's a character who can run on debris and it makes sense, whereas like these are humans running on debris. They're like in the Matrix, and it's like it's free falling debris. How are you running on? How are you like controlling your like? It doesn't. It didn't work for me. And
also, where did the fucking parachute come from? That's she just grabs a parachute, and I was like, where'd that parachute come from? Like, why is there a parachute right there when she needs it?
Ryan, did you have a favorite action scene or anything like that? I'm
kind of like in James's thing. Like, it was kind of underwhelming. What you mentioned was a good fight scene, like the one-on-one fight between the two. Mm-hmm. That was fine. I still think they should make a movie about Budapest, about
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Origin movie. This actually tried to answer a lot of those questions, and then just made us want it more, because it's still not answering. Like, there was a fight scene. Like, apparently he shot his arrows inside that apartment, which means he was fighting her in the apartment before she defected.
Yep.
And then they did, like, this is all making me still want to see it a lot more.
Right, me too.
Make it a 45-minute thing on Disney Plus. I don't care. You can do anything now, Marvel Studios. You don't even have
animated
to
for all I care.
You animate it.
We've got What If coming up, so
who knows? Now, before we wrap this thing up and give our last minute thoughts, guys, we need to talk about the end credit scene and what it means for the future
it's
of the MCU.
It's just a setup for Hawkeye.
So what do you think? How do you think now?
It's not just Hawkeye though. It's something else they're alluding to, which you have to hold into context what happened at the end of Winter Soldier, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where Elaine from Seinfeld is recruiting not Captain America.
Sure.
Clearly,
like everyone was surmising that this is what was going on with that one, but this one I think cements it. They're
she's trying to create
for
the Thunderbolts.
She's trying to create the Dark Avengers. I hope they go with the Thunderbolts name, but I think specifically what they're doing, because they've gone after two characters that are very similar to existing Avenger characters, with Yelena being a Black Widow analog, John Walker being a Captain America analog, and we saw in the teaser for Shang-Chi that Abomination is still around. Yeah. So I have a feeling that at the end of Abomination, we might get him into a Dark Avenger situation. I hope they call it the Thunderbolts, because essentially the teams are basically the same concept. The difference is that the Dark Avengers was very specific about mimicking the Avengers characters, because Tony Stark tied them into S.H.I.E.L.D., and when Norman Osborn took over S.H.I.E.L.D. as its director, or Sword as Hammer, or whatever he called it. I don't remember what agency he called it.
Sword, Hammer.
One of the acronym titles that he gave it. There's a dozen of them, and they're all interchangeable. But when he took over, he made the Dark Avengers using their names and using characters that had very similar power sets. So, like specifically Daken, or however you say his name, as Wolverine, and you had the Sentry, but you had like very specific characters in, like, I can't remember her name, but one of them as Ms. Marvel, and then a character as Spider-Man, like very specifically using their identities. And I think that's what's going on here, is that the Countess is recruiting people to be in Thunderbolts, but I think it's going to mimic the Dark Avengers in terms of who is on that team. We also have Baron Mordo kicking around still, who could be, a Dark Doctor Strange. We've got, how many different guys in suits. Justin Hammer's still out there. Right. So people have surmised that he's going to steal the Iron Patriot outfits and use that. So like there's all kinds of analogs out there. I think that while it's going to be I hope it's Thunderbolts name, because that team has a little bit more history and weight to it in terms of continuity and sort of history. I think that they're going for more of a Dark Avengers sort of aesthetic with the identities.
Yeah. Now,
see, she's the anti-Nick Fury. It's kind of interesting how this is sort of an analog now. She keeps showing up at the end of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is very much like the Avengers, or the S.H.I.E.L.D. showing up in Avengers.
It kind of reminds me, gives me that feel of how, like, when Nick Fury initially showed up in Iron Man, kind of that end.
That's literally exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that part. Sorry. But so the reason I wanted to bring it up is the implications of what's going to happen. Like, it's obvious it sets up Hawkeye, but do you think she's going to be like? Do you think Yelena is going to be the main antagonist, or do you think she's going to just go and pop in a couple of episodes? Like,
I think it'll be.
Also, how do we think it's going to, prediction wise? How do we think it's going to play out when it comes to her finally facing Hawkeye? Because in her mind, how I think the one lady is Miss. I think she's Miss Hydra, basically.
Val.
She's almost kind of brainwashed Yelena into thinking how her sister died versus how she actually died.
Mm-hmm. I think that she's obviously working for Val, which is probably not very good news. She's an assassin, which is not a very good career path. And I think Clint Barton is going to basically redeem his second Black Widow in a row.
Yeah.
And do the same trick over again and be like, do for her what he did for her sister, which is bring her to the right side of everything. And
that's what I hope.
She's been confirmed as being in Hawkeye the series, so
I do hope that she's not the main villain in that, though, because I would like to see, because it's one of our first sort of legacy stories where, I mean, we've got Ant-Man and now Black Widow, where they're passing, and I guess Winter Soldier, Captain America, where they're passing on these things. This is very much the generational sort of thing. So I would like to see whoever trained Hawkeye as sort of the main villain.
Yeah, well, Swordsman will be certainly in the comics. He has a long history with Hawkeye, but it's been confirmed that Swordsman will be in Hawkeye. So I don't know if he's going to be the villain or what, but he's going to be it, because Swordsman was a bad guy at first, and then he joined the Avengers.
I mean, so was Black Widow, so was Hawkeye.
Yeah, because I feel like Yelena needs to play a big role. Maybe not necessarily the main villain, but she needs to play a big role if they're setting it up this big. Because you're talking about a franchise movie, and then you're going to bring her to the smaller screen on Disney Plus. She has to be something, not just a 1 or 2 episode thing. Like,
no, she'll have an arc in it.
Be a lot of there and a lot of long-term storytelling for it to have a good payoff. You know what I mean? As far as either redemption, or I don't foresee her killing him off. I don't see that. No. I think Ryan.
I don't think he's going to survive the series, though.
You don't think so?
No, because I think he's on. Like, I think Jeremy Renner's on his way out. And I think this is very much about passing on the baton. And I really hope they don't cop out the way they did with Steve Rogers and not answer the question whether or not he's alive or dead.
Right.
Because I'm really tired of everyone saying he's dead. They haven't given any indication the man is actually dead. So stop telling me the man is dead.
He's just an old man living out his life.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. But like, with Hawkeye, I feel like we need closure. And I think we need to like...
What are you talking about? We know exactly where Steve is. He's the president of the United States. Come on.
Everyone says he's on the moon, but
I don't think that.
I see him on the news every night.
I don't think he'll be killed off because I don't think it'd be a good ending for the character because he has his family. Because it would almost diminish what happened in Endgame and Natasha's sacrifice, because she sacrificed herself so that he could be with his family, and then just killing him off in his own show would diminish that. So I feel like maybe
him sacrificing himself to save his family though would be a good play though. I think him sacrificing himself to save his family would be a good play. Like, I don't think he's going to be around in other films, and they need a reason for him to not be around. And they've already used the excuse that he has a family like twice now, and he still comes back. So like that doesn't hold water. He needs a reason to not be there anymore. is my point. Right. And not cop out like they did with Steve and not answer the question about where he is.
Right.
Like they need to pull a full Tony on this and just say, there's a reason why Robert Downey Jr. is not going to be in the films anymore. He is dead. End of story. It's sad, but let's move on.
We did a 3-hour show on the future of Marvel. We could honestly do it all over again. We could. Just with the revelations that have come thus far. After Loki finishes, we could do a whole.
That's part of the thing with these films is that they make us ask these questions because they keep leaving these Easter eggs.
Yep.
And that's part of the fun is that these Easter eggs make us ask these questions and make us wonder, and that's how we keep our enthusiasm between the films. Like that's the very reason why Nick Fury was so exciting in the first Iron Man film, was because it opens the door to a whole world of possibilities, and those they know that these appearances keep our interest between films, and that's why they're there, is to keep us going. It's not there for their sake, it's there to keep us excited. Like it's a joke at this point. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. It makes it very exciting to see what's going to happen in the future, so I can't wait. When does Hawkeye come out, guys?
Sometime late. It's really frustrating. They never really give the dates. We just like this weekend got the date for What If. It's August 11th.
Yeah,
it's less than a month away, and we just got word of when the official date is. So it's frustrating. But it both that and Miss Marvel are hitting quote unquote late 2021. So late this year. So it'll probably be November maybe, and then Eternals hits in November. So I don't know when around then they're going to. But it'll be something.
Hopefully we'll get some answers in Hawkeye, and we'll see Yelena pop back up and see how it transpires between the two. That's the part I'm most excited about, is how that dynamic's going to work out between those two characters. But that'll do it for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. More importantly, what did you think of Black Widow? Leave your comments section below. Give us your positives and negatives and your score out of 10. Also, if you like what you watched, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you can receive more of our various content in the future. That's all I have for today. I'm Josh Williams.
I'm Ryan Murphy.
I'm James Sheridan.
And thank you for keeping it real
with ReelTime.
Good night.